Hey, Errity, comments on week three. Now, the first one, three assignments. First one, system change. You talk about postpartum mothers and the lack of support they have, and certainly, I tested both the uh, challenges for postpartum, as well as the excitement as well. Having three kids, so gone through this, or trying to support my wife. So interesting that okay, kind of a clearly defined need, lack of support. I thought interesting was this does happen, right? So actually, there are both you talked about other cultures having better established kind of networks of support, and it does happen to some degree here in the even in the United States. So certainly, mothers getting together and sort of cooking for new mothers, things like that. That we've sort of been part of that. So there are places where it happens and times where it happens, and probably in certain communities that are tighter. As society has become a bit more individualized and atomistic, we've kind of lost those connections. So I was interested as to it was a good post. You kind of present this sort of new equilibrium. I didn't ask for this, so I won't. This was not how I graded it. But the next question is: so how do you actually get to that point? Um, how do you create, change some behaviours and things like that, so allow for that cooperation and collaboration, that shared behaviour? Because actually changing behaviours is actually really hard. I mean, you'll know this from your work at the Haven, right? Changing behaviours is very difficult. And in fact, I thought what was interesting. I thought your 3 point was it 3.3, um, the your PDCA assignment um, on its goals and things like that, and its goals of a new program, was actually a great example of system change, challenges of system change. So I'll come back to that in a second. The 3.2. Well, actually, sorry. Let's stick with that. So on that one, you talked about identifying a new program. Um, you described it as innovative, but then you also talked about the research behind it. So I can see. So it seemed to me that it's innovative for them, but not an innovative program. So it's a particular application of an established program, right? So I just want to be cautious about the people term innovative when they don't really mean it, or they mean it, and they often mean it because it sort of sounds exciting and sexy when it's innovative, but even if it's not, so that's kind of one of the sort of weird things about I think the non-profit sector, maybe even culture, anyway. Um, so you talked about you gave a nice description of the logic model, the inputs, outputs, or inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes. There was the you did not. So you talked about how much downfall was that it was relied on you, and I think that kind of that I was looking for, or I'd been interested, and I think it'd have been richer if you'd have kind of got into that issue. So okay, so what does that mean then for bringing about change in organisations or changing about system? Um, what would you have done differently? Would you have done anything differently? You talked about some of the staff who've been there for a long time. So how do you change their behaviours? It's all well and good to say here's a great program um, and it has all these benefits, but if people don't recognise those benefits and they're not willing to change, how do you bring that about? So those are questions I think that it'd be good for you good to think about. What could you have done differently? Assuming that really how other people are reacting and going to react is sort of outside of your control, right? It's a given, you know. So you have to sort of respond. Okay, how do I work with whatever their needs are, their issues are, their way of behaving, uh, rather than simply just criticise it. It's kind of easy for us to criticise government, others, communities, whatever. This question is, what do we do about? How do we change that? And that's kind of one thing about trying to change an equilibrium. How do you get incentives to change, behaviours to change, when actually you don't control them directly? a lot of non-profits in that position. Um, in terms of the presentation to the mayor and the police about the new program, it was a good um, good assignment. We talked about hotspots. We talked about the research over the hotspots, and it was sort of well laid out. And you had researched things. I was pleased that you kind of you quoted the research, so that was good. Where I thought it was a bit lacking was you addressed very much the reducing crime, kept quiet on the police violence, response to police violence, and so just kind of interested. Okay, so why focus on one half and not the other? And admittedly, almost everyone else did the same, pretty much the same thing, which is sort of focused on whether it be a source of violence, or a sort of source of crime, around behaviour change, people in the community, or young people at risk. One person focused heavily on the um, police behaviours to the exclusion of the at-risk young people. So thought that was interesting that few people really tried to sort of think, okay, well, no one really tried to think, okay, how do we address both of these sides of a similar coin, with the same coin, similar coin. So that would have been so okay, that's what I mean. It wasn't quite thorough enough. Half it was left. And then also kind of questions about, okay, well then how might this be implemented, some of the challenges. So I think a little bit more depth on that would have been great. But that's all for this week. Glad you're caught up to speed. Hopefully you'll be on track for the rest of the program.